Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Radhika. I'm a third year medical student at Queen's University Belfast, and today I want to talk about how to do well in MMI interviews. I'm also going to put a mock at the end of the video. It'll be about maybe 6 to 7 questions so that you can practice. I've quite a lot of experience when it comes to talking about MMIs. I regularly give talks for my university about them. I also do a lot of MMI tutoring. I've been involved in mock MMIs and actual MMIs, so I would say that I'm pretty well versed in the subject. So I want to share all of the tips that I have sort of come up with and also used myself for my medical school interviews to help you. So first of all, let's talk about basic things. What are some things that you should definitely know for a medical interview? Number 1, why do you want to study medicine? Number 2, why do you want to study medicine at that specific university? And number 3, what skills and qualities do you have from past experiences that are going to help you be a good medical student and a doctor? So these 3 basic questions I think are probably the hardest to answer. Some people like to use the framework camp when it comes to talking about medicine. In my personal experience, I think when you're answering the question, why medicine, it's probably one of the hardest ones to answer, and I think that question alone deserves a whole other video. But in general, try and go into your interview with the mindset that every time I say something, I should have evidence to back it up. So for example, if I was saying in my interview, I want to be a doctor because I know that doctors teach and I'm really interested in that aspect of academic medicine, then I need to have an example. Otherwise, what I'm saying doesn't have any substance. If I wanted to really impress the interviewer, I would say something like, I have done a lot of tutoring, I've been involved in peer teaching groups from the age of 14 in my school, and that has really helped me gain confidence with communication. I've learned how to adapt my communication style to suit different people's learning needs. I've also had to work with children who have additional learning requirements. Someone just beeped. I really enjoy the satisfaction of taking very complex scientific knowledge and having to explain it concisely to someone, and that essentially is what doctors do. So I could say something like that in my interview, and that's showing the interviewer that, okay, number 1, this person has understood the question, number 2, she knows what a doctor does, and number 3, she has actually got experience to back up what she's saying. Don't forget that doctors don't just see patients. I think a lot of people tend to say doctors see patients and doctors are involved in research. And everyone has stuff to talk about when it comes to seeing patients clinically, because you know, if you're watching this video and you're really serious about medicine, you've probably done some sort of volunteering at like a care home, or you've done volunteering at a hospital or work experience at a hospital. Not everyone has experience when it comes to research. So you might be thinking, well, how am I meant to get around that? How do I show that if I'm interested in research and that aspect of medicine, how do I get that across in my interview? I personally think the easiest way to get it across is to simply go on to BBC, look up that university that you wish to apply to, and see what scientific research they're putting out. Every single university in the UK has some sort of research output. Some, like for example, colleges like UCL or Imperial or Cambridge or Oxford, are obviously doing like a lot of research, and they're very research heavy universities. Other universities do research, but they don't do research to that level, but they're still doing it. You actually come across as someone who's really desirable if you've read about that university's research, because for all you know, you could be sitting across in the interview from the very person who has done that research. So it's good to know things, and it's good to talk about how you would want to be involved in research as well. I think that's the main thing when it comes to answering the question of why medicine and why medicine at that specific university. Be specific and talk about what you know that university does and how you would really want to integrate yourself into that university's life. So the next sort of domain that I was talking about comes under skills, qualities, experiences, basically reflection. A really good framework that I like to talk about is the STAR framework. If you've never heard of STAR, it stands for situation, task, action, result, and reflection. I want you to think about which part of this framework you think is the most important. I really hope you were thinking reflection, because if you did, you're correct. Reflection is probably like one of the most important parts of medicine, and that alone could be an interview question. Think about it, because you're doing an MMI, you're going to have to switch from one side of your brain to the other really quickly, and therefore they can pretty much ask you anything. They could ask you, why do you think reflection is important in medicine? If you wanted, you could like pause the video now and try answering that yourself. I think if I was answering the question why reflection is important, I would want to really break it down, and I could break it down by using the STAR technique. I could talk about a time when I have had to reflect on my own performance, and then I would talk about sort of what I learned from that experience. When it comes to thinking of examples and experiences in your life that you can use for the MMI, keep it simple. Honestly, it's so obvious to someone who has tutored a lot of people when like a student is just making things up. It's so painfully obvious. A really good way to like avoid making things up is to just think back to day one of school, like what you've actually done. I'm not saying you have to have done crazy things. Honestly, simple things could be you were in a geography class and you had to do a group project, and that's somewhere you could start with. Remember, all the examples that you use from your life will showcase a variety of skills and qualities, also known as buzzwords. Words that you've used in your personal statement or college essays like teamwork, communication, leadership, responsibility, empathy, integrity, resilience. They are all qualities and skills that you need to be a good doctor, and therefore you need to make sure that you're continuously mentioning them in your interview answers. So what you can do if you're watching this video is take a piece of paper, sit down, pause the video, and think of an example for this particular question. So in my opinion, when it comes to answering interview questions using the STAR technique, it's really important to not get bogged down by the nitty-gritty. Honestly, nobody cares about the story that much, but they care about what you learned from that experience, because that's pretty much where all the bulk of your MMI marks are going to be coming in. You want to make sure that in your reflection, you are making reference to the GMC's Good Medical Practice. Maybe by the time this video is out, that document will not exist, but trust me when I say this, the GMC are always publishing guidance on how medical students and how doctors should be behaving and how they should be conducting themselves. You don't need to read the document. Honestly, I always tell people, don't read the document, like don't read it in and out. It's just very cumbersome, but I'm guaranteeing you that every single buzzword and key quality and skill is mentioned in that document. So just say it. If I was reflecting on my experiences of working in a team, I would say something like this. So I'd like to reflect on my experience. I think in this situation, I worked well in a team because I made sure to include everyone. I made sure that I was organized and that I was keeping up to date with all of the messages coming into our team's group chat. I made sure to communicate my ideas effectively to the team, and I also made sure to listen to everyone because I understand that's a really important part of being in a team. In medical school, I know that your university teaches with a case-based learning approach, and therefore good team working skills are important. As a doctor in the future, I'm going to be working as part of the MDT or the multidisciplinary team, and when patients see doctors interacting professionally and with respect when it comes to their team, it instills a lot of trust in the profession, and ultimately that patient feels like their care is going to be taken seriously. I also understand that in the GMC's Good Medical Practice document, teamwork is quite an essential point in the document, and the GMC states that medical students and doctors need to be continuously working on this skill. And so I feel like from this example, I've demonstrated that I can work well in a team, and I know that I will continuously strive to improve my team working skills as well for my career. Something along those lines. You can see here that I was very succinct when I was talking about the summary of like my experience. I mentioned a couple of buzzwords. I talked about medical school, being a doctor, and then I brought the GMC in. So the final thing I want to talk about before I give you the 6 or 7 question mock exam is to know frameworks. There are 3 frameworks that I like to teach people. We've already talked about STAR. The second one is spikes. You've probably heard of spikes if you've been watching other videos on YouTube or doing a bit of revision. Spikes is for breaking bad news, and I would say it's probably one of the most important frameworks that you should know for your MMI, because I guarantee if there's a role play, at least one of them will be on Breaking Bad News, and it might not be Breaking Bad News the way you think it is. So with Breaking Bad News, it could be that you are actually breaking bad news to a patient in a medical setting, but you could very well have to break bad news to your friends. For example, you might have to break the bad news to your friend that you lost her car keys, or that you broke her favorite teapot, or that you can't go on that trip with her anymore. So it's like breaking bad news, but it's not in like a medical setting. It's in a more conversational friend setting. I actually think that type of thing is harder because it feels a little bit more uncomfortable, and I think that's why it's more likely to come up, because of the fact that it is uncomfortable. It really does test you, and it tests your understanding of how to deal with complex situations and how to basically de-escalate. Remember, you don't want to make something worse. You want to try and make the situation better. And that's a tough skill. The final framework is SPIES. SPIES is a framework that is used for what I call dealing with dodgy colleagues. Basically, someone is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and you have to deal with the situation. So these situations could be a friend is asking you to sign her in for a lecture that she's not attending, or someone is taking equipment from a patient supplies cupboard in the hospital, or someone is taking equipment so that they can practice putting cannulas in on themselves at home. Basically, someone is definitely doing something that they shouldn't be, and they're acting shady. That's where you use SPIES. If you've done SJT style exams before, that's where this sort of framework is used. It's used a lot in real life because you need to, again, deal with the situation, but at the same time, you need to be professional when dealing with it. I always think, know the framework, be able to talk your way through it, and also be able to apply it. So you might be asked it in a roleplay setting, but very well so you could be asked to explain how you would break bad news to someone, or to explain how you would deal with the situation. Just remember, again, the GMC's code of conduct does apply here. You need to make sure that if you see someone doing something they shouldn't be, that you are acting with integrity and honesty, and that you are acting professionally and making someone aware that not only what they're doing is wrong, but why what they're doing is wrong. It's not enough to say to someone, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. You need to be able to say why what they're doing is wrong, because that hopefully will make them less likely to do it again. So I hope these 3 tips were helpful in sort of giving you an introduction to how you should be thinking when it comes to approaching an MMI. I'm now going to put a couple of MMI mock questions for you to try. Whenever each of the questions comes up, just pause it, take a minute to think, then answer for around 3 or 4 minutes, and I'll put a couple of sample points that you can use in your answers. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, please please comment, and feel free to share it if you need to. Thank you so much for watching, and here's the mock.